Now, obviously, from a biological point of view, the major difference between the two sexes is basically one chromosome. You've got 22 chromosomes that are similar, and then you have one that is different. And so the thing that's interesting to me is that, and this is just a sociological comment, let's call it that, okay, is that for the longest time, nature defined our gender for us. I was biologically born a male, and therefore my maleness was defined by my nature, by my anatomy, if you will. Now, we've got countless examples where things go wrong. Mutations occur where the anatomy is ambiguous. We call it that, anatomical ambiguity. So that a little boy or a little girl, when they're born, the genitals don't develop correctly, and they're ambiguous, and parents have a terrible choice to make. But for the longest time, nature defined gender. We are now in a time and age where this is no longer true. Is that actually we're not talking about gender that's tied to biology anymore. We are now in an age where we break this bond, and now we're talking about what we refer to as gender identity. In other words, we have many people today, yourselves included, that have been part of this particular generation, where we strive to be free from nature. Free from nature. Now, how can I make that statement? I'll tell you how. Some of you may have noticed, some of you may not have noticed, that for the first time in the history of the Miss America pageant or Miss Universe pageant, we actually had a contestant who was not born female. Okay? So when you do the biological definition of gender, she, who was formerly a he, had basically an XY chromosomes. But we have come into a society now where gender identity is defined not by nature, but by individual choice, essentially. And that is a slippery slope, ultimately. So with women, XX, they get a chromosome from mom and dad, and they match, and we are now in the female, born female, and then XY for boys. And these chromosomes determine the individual's anatomical sex. But increasingly with sex reassignment surgeries and so forth, that we're not any longer defined by that. The principle, when a Y chromosome is linked with an X chromosome, it triggers the production of testosterone, which then moves on by its production to trigger the development of the male sex organs, etc. Okay, and all the male sex characteristics, which later comes out in puberty. The same thing is true for women, is that when XX gets teamed together, then we have the production of estrogen, and essentially during this time, this contributes to then the development of the sex organs in the little one to be a little girl, and it also impacts estrogen impacts then, of course, the puberty later on and the secondary sexual characteristics. So the fourth and fifth prenatal months, the male's greater testosterone and the female's greater level of ovarian hormones, estrogen being a main player in that, impact the brain's wiring. And there used to be a guy who used to joke about the differences between men's and women's brains. And the interesting thing to keep in mind here is that in utero, in the case of a little girl, it's a girl in a girl's body with all the resulting hormones. For a little boy, it's a boy in a woman's body with all the according hormones as well. And so the male-female differences in brain areas with abundant sex hormone receptors during development are key in having an impact. And some researchers would suggest that even the brain differences are a result of these the fourth and fifth prenatal months, and the female hormone that washes over a little girl's brain is completely native to her. For a little boy, it is not, and that would suggest that it has an impact on actual brain development and brain differences themselves. I will put, not into this video, but I will certainly put up a video that is very humorous, that's called Men's and Women's Brains. And it's a humorist that is talking about it, and he basically calls it the tale of two brains. And if you want to look it up, you can. It's on YouTube. There's a longer version and a shorter version. And while it's very funny, there's a certain level of truth to it in particular.